What should we expect from Star Citizen in 2025? It's time to make some informed guesses. Will we see nicks? What about some instance content? I actually have a theory, some might call it a conspiracy theory, that I think will define the whole year. But first, let me give you the guesses up front, and then I'll explain my thinking. The focus for the start of the year will be getting 4.0 fixed up and going properly live, maybe February or March. And then I'm running on the assumption that we get a 4.1, 4.2, and then finish off the year with a 4.3. Now, that might not happen, but we'll use that as our framework for predictions, and I would love to hear your predictions for those patches in the comments as well. 4.1 should be the easiest one to get right. All of the items that were cut from 4.0 should reappear. Now, historically, when CIG delay things like this, they don't actually all make it back into the next patch. And I'm half expecting the transit refactor to get delayed until later in the year. We've not heard any work on it or heard any progress. It's obviously a huge job, and in some ways I'd prefer the devs actually take their time and get that one right, because I'm fed up of being killed by elevators. But the big hitters like engineering and fire should make it into 4.1. CIG did lay out plans to test gameplay features in the EPTU in the recent letter from the chairman, so hopefully with engineering especially, we'll see it in an EPTU branch pretty early on in the year. Other than those features, will CIG continue to push on server meshing? Will we see 1,000 player shards at some point this year? I'm not sure that will happen in 4.1, but hopefully they'll keep pushing and tweaking the tech throughout the year. I've heard some predictions that dynamic server meshing will somehow come this year, and I think that is very, very unlikely. Let's move on to 4.2. At CitizenCon 2024, Chris said this.
We've defined what Star Citizen 1.0 will be and shown features such as base building and monster hunting that will be delivering the next 12 to 18 months.
Now, if you've been around Star Citizen for more than 5 minutes, you'll know not to trust this man with any dates. But from what we've heard, the Sandworm is actually coming along sooner than some people think, and who knows exactly what that means. But I'm going to predict that it does make it for 4.2. And again, this is a prime candidate for testing in the EPTU, so I'm expecting it to hit that channel once the testing for the 4.1 features is finished. Chris also mentioned base building in that clip, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's move on to another thing that I'm predicting for 4.2. The recent letter from the chairman mentioned that CIG's content will drive an overall narrative forward in 2025. He named Overdrive and Save Stanton as examples. Now, I've personally had one of the worst experiences I've ever had in gaming trying to complete Save Stanton. I'm around 25 hours in and I still need to complete the 6 Idris missions. So many bugs, missions just failing, it's been awful. So, I'm half predicting this one because CIG has genuinely hurt me this year. I think CIG is going to start experimenting with instance content. Siege of Orison, Xenothreat, so many of these large pieces of content that CIG has created over the last few years have just been completely broken by performance issues, but also by the fact that other players can have mostly completed the event before you even arrive. So, instancing them so that smaller groups can play at their own pace with better performance makes complete sense. And we now have instance hangers in the game. Can CIG explore whole mission areas as their own instance? It's one of the goals for 1.0, and CIG, if they are really serious about 2025 being the year of playability, let's hope they intend to improve the content in this game. I'm going for instancing in 4.2. 4.3, what will make it into the end of the year patch? Now, I'm expecting to see a big update to all the Planet Tech stuff at CitizenCon in 2025. And I think if we're very lucky, we might see our first Genesis planets and moons in the game in this end of year patch. We will hopefully get more ground locations using Starchitect, all the stuff that they showed this year. And so maybe we might get a Herson or Microtech refresh, the whole planet using the new Planet Tech stuff. My real hope for a year focused on playability is that some of the social tools shown at CitizenCon 2024 actually make it into the game. Now, they showed a lot of stuff. We're not hoping for everything. I would like an updated friends list with all the new functionality that they showed, and the party finder would be pretty nice as well. I just don't think all tools will be anywhere near ready, but any improvements that CIG can make to the social side of the game, that would be very nice. Now, so far, that's looking a bit light for an end-of-year patch, so let's be hopeful and throw a very basic version of base building into 4.3. Again, this is something that CIG will want to thoroughly test on the EPTU, and I'm only expecting the ability to place very basic buildings and create very small bases. The grading functionality, that won't be anywhere to be seen. None of the planetary shield stuff, no chance that's going to be in. I think just a way for CIG to start testing base building at a big scale. And that is a very optimistic prediction. I think I'm pretty unsure about that one, but you never know. Let's be hopeful. Now, there will obviously be new ships throughout the year, and with a focus on performance, I'm expecting lots of interesting testing for this channel. But you may notice my predictions are very light. I'm not expecting a whole heap this year. Why? Well, this is where my conspiracy theory comes in. CIG has said that 2025 will be a drive for performance, stability, and content. They've kind of framed this as a response to the community asking for those things. And it's true, many people in the community have been begging CIG to improve the experience of just playing the game for, well, since the start really, but for many, many years. But I think the focus on playability this year is also because they don't have anything major to actually deliver. CIG doesn't have really anything sexy, let's say, ready for 2025. If we look back at CitizenCon 2023, CIG suddenly had a load of stuff to show off.
One of the real reasons why we wanted to show you this CitizenCon is because we've hit an inflection point on a lot of the features, as in they're either finished or they're in polishing stage, which is why we're showing them.
CIG was showing us features that were finished or being polished. The work that they've been doing on Squadron provided Star Citizen with some features that were basically ready to go into the game. But almost everything they showed off at CitizenCon 2024 was concept art, or a slide, or just early ideas effectively. Some of the things shown were very, very long-term goals, and almost nothing shown was ready to just go into the game. Now, I've seen many people predict Nix for 2025, and I unfortunately just don't see that. Now that we only have 5 systems coming into the released version of the game, 1.0, I think CIG will want to flesh out what you can actually do in each of them. Nix has to have compelling reasons to visit. They can't just throw out a bare system. And a recent lawmakers question thing basically said this: many of the planets in our system had been described as desolate and depleted to align with development expectations at the time. However, our ability to populate worlds has progressed significantly since then. While we still will have barren worlds to trek across, many of the planets will become richer and more memorable experiences for players to explore. A good example of this is the evolution of the planets in Pyro. And I think this one statement almost guarantees that Nix isn't coming this year. Now, we did see at CitizenCon a pretty finished version of Delamar, but it was just concept art for the planets, nothing more. There is a huge amount of work still to be done, especially if they're wanting to create planets that have got more stuff on them, like they said in that statement. The major gameplay feature for Nix also is Vandal Rays. Now, I don't know about you, I'm fairly doubtful that CIG will want to even drop any Vandal content before Squadron 42. So far, they've really held back from showing us much. Ships that we know are finished are not in game. There's all sorts of stuff, and I just cannot see Nix coming this year in any way. Crafting is the big one that so many of us want. It's a huge part of the game that will affect all sorts of things in the game. And I think we have to assume that some of the devs that are working on crafting, like Torsten, will be required to support things like engineering that are coming to the game this year. We've seen this over and over again. If one thing takes longer than CIG expected, it has a knock-on effect for other things. So maybe, if we're incredibly lucky, we could see some basic blueprints come in for maybe one item type, say FPS weapons as kind of a big test of the system, but there's almost no chance that the whole crafting system gets rolled out in 2025. That's almost impossible. And if Chris himself stands on stage and only predicts the sandworm and the base building as features that might come in the next 12 to 18 months, we surely have to assume that none of the rest of the stuff that they've shown is anywhere near being ready. Now, this theory of mine that CIG has nothing massive to drop and is using playability as a bit of a smokescreen, a bit of a distraction for what is actually going to be a pretty feature-light year, I don't think this is some sort of evil plan. I don't think that CIG are trying to trick us. It's probably more that Rich and the team just looked at the year and thought, we've just delivered server meshing, the last big tech pillar. We've not really got any massive features ready to drop. Why don't we just use this year to fix the game? I mean, it does make complete sense, and I'm not complaining. The game does need fixing, but it might make for what feels like a bit of a slow year. And just so we're clear, I'm fully aware that I'll look back at this video and think I've got most of this wrong, but predictions are fun. What do you think? What are your predictions for 4.1, 4.2 and 4.3? Let me know in the comments.